The Olympic Games are meant to crown the greatest dreams on Earth, moments of glory forged by sacrifice, discipline, and hope. But sometimes the world's biggest stage turns lethal. In seconds, cheers vanish, history fractures, and ambition collides with danger. These are not tales of victory, but of athletes and spectators who stepped into Olympic legend and never walked out. Tonight, we uncover when the pursuit of greatness crossed the line into tragedy. Number 1. Nicholas Bochatay. Killed by speed before the finish line. February 22, 1992. High in the French Alps at Les Arcs, the air was thin, cold, and electrified with danger. This was speed skiing, a sport so extreme it flirted with physics itself. Athletes didn't just ski downhill. They launched themselves towards speeds over 120 miles per hour, faster than most cars on a highway. And this would be the last time the Olympics ever allowed it. At 27, Nicholas Bochatay was one of Switzerland's elite speed skiers. Years of brutal training had hardened him for this moment. He understood the risks better than anyone, the razor-thin margin between control and catastrophe, the violent consequences of a single mistake. This Olympic appearance, even as a demonstration sport, was likely his only chance to race on the world's biggest stage. He couldn't afford hesitation. The morning conditions were perfect. Clear visibility, fast snow, deadly speed. During a warm-up run on a slope adjacent to the official course, Nicholas launched off a small bump, a routine moment for athletes accustomed to flying inches above the ice. But when he landed, fate was already waiting. Directly in his path was a snow grooming machine, massive, slow, and impossible to avoid at such speed. Its lights were flashing. Its siren was sounding. None of it mattered. At over 100 miles per hour, there was no time to react, no space to escape. The impact was instantaneous and fatal. Nicholas slammed into the snowcat with overwhelming force, his body absorbing violence no human could survive. The speed skiing community froze in disbelief. Olympic officials were stunned. The event went on, but something had irreversibly broken. Several athletes withdrew in shock. Others raced with the weight of death hanging over the course. Nicholas Bochatay's death ended more than a life, it ended a sport's Olympic future. Speed skiing was immediately removed and never returned. His final run became a brutal warning etched into Olympic history. When the pursuit of speed crosses a certain line, the margin for survival disappears. Number 2. Nodar Kumaritashvili. The run that changed the Olympics forever. The morning of February 12, 2010, should have been routine. Just another training run before the Olympic spotlight turned fully on. But at the Whistler Sliding Center, nothing felt normal. The track was a monster, faster, steeper, and more unforgiving than anything the sport of luge had ever seen. Speeds pushed past 95 miles per hour, G-forces crushed the body, and even elite athletes whispered concerns after violent crashes in practice. At just 21 years old, Nodar Kumaritashvili stood at the top carrying more than a sled. He carried the hopes of Georgia, the pride of his family, and the legacy of his father, a former luger himself. Raised with limited resources and basic training facilities, Nodar had clawed his way to the Olympics through raw determination and fearlessness. This was his dream, his first Olympic Games, and he was determined to prove he belonged among the world's best, no matter how dangerous the track looked. As he launched from the start, Nodar tucked into the razor-thin aerodynamic position that defines luge. The sled screamed down the ice faster with every curve. Officials watched silently as he approached the final section, one of the most lethal stretches ever built. Then, in a fraction of a second, everything went wrong. A tiny steering error at extreme speed sent his sled lifting off the ice. Nodar was thrown violently from the track, soaring over the protective wall and slamming into an unpadded steel pillar at nearly highway speed. The impact was catastrophic. Medical teams rushed in, but the damage was beyond repair. Hours before the opening ceremony, the Olympic dream ended in death. His passing stunned the world and forced a brutal question: had the Olympics pushed speed and spectacle too far? The track was altered immediately, but the cost had already been paid. Nodar Kumaritashvili became a haunting symbol of how thin the line is between glory and disaster. Number 3. Alice Hawthorne. The night the Olympic dream exploded. On the warm night of July 27, 1996, Centennial Olympic Park felt like the safest place on Earth. Music echoed through downtown Atlanta, flags waved, and thousands of visitors packed together to celebrate the Olympic spirit. This was the heart of the Games, a place built for joy, unity, and unforgettable memories. For Alice Hawthorne, it was supposed to be exactly that. At 44 years old, Alice had saved for months to bring her 14-year-old daughter to the Olympics. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, a chance to witness history and share something magical together. As they stood near the stage watching a live concert under the summer sky, nothing felt dangerous. No checkpoints, no fear, just music, laughter, and the illusion of safety. But danger was already there, hidden in plain sight. Nearby, a security guard noticed a suspicious backpack tucked beside a sound tower. Inside were pipe bombs. He began clearing the area, racing against time. Then, at 1:20 a.m., the night shattered. The bomb detonated with brutal force, ripping through the crowd. Shrapnel flew like bullets. Screams replaced music. Celebration turned into chaos in seconds. Alice was struck by flying metal fragments. She collapsed as her daughter cried for help, surrounded by smoke, panic, and blood. Emergency responders flooded the park, but the damage was done. Alice Hawthorne became the only person killed directly by the attack, while more than 100 others were injured in the blast and the stampede that followed. Her death marked a dark turning point in Olympic history. The Games continued, but innocence was gone forever. Security would never again be relaxed. Alice didn't come to compete. She didn't chase medals. Yet her life became the price that forced the Olympics to confront a terrifying truth: even the world's greatest celebration is not immune to violence. Number 4. Francisco Lázaro. The marathon that turned deadly. July 14, 1912. Under a merciless Stockholm sun, the Olympic marathon was about to become a human endurance experiment with no safety net. Temperatures soared toward 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Water stations were scarce, and medical knowledge of heat exhaustion was dangerously primitive. This was the early age of the Olympics: glory first, survival second. Francisco Lázaro, just 21 years old, stood at the starting line as Portugal's very first Olympic marathon runner. Slight in build, but heavy with responsibility, he carried the pride of an entire nation, still finding its place on the world stage. He had trained in Portugal's mild climate, never facing conditions like this, but backing down was unthinkable. Quitting meant failure. Finishing meant history. In a tragic miscalculation, Francisco coated his body with oil or wax before the race, believing it would protect him from the sun. Instead, it sealed his fate. The substance trapped heat inside his body, disabling its ability to cool through sweat. With every mile, his core temperature climbed higher, silently, relentlessly. As the race stretched into the countryside, runners began dropping out under the crushing heat. Francisco pushed on. Spectators noticed his erratic pace, his glazed expression, his staggering steps, but there were no medical teams stationed along the course. No one stopped him. No one could. Around the 19-mile mark, Francisco collapsed onto the dusty road. His body temperature had reached an estimated 106 degrees. He never regained consciousness. Rushed to a Stockholm hospital, doctors were powerless. The science to save him didn't yet exist. Francisco Lázaro died the following morning, becoming the first Olympic athlete to die as a direct result of competition. His dream ended far from the stadium, far from the finish line. But his death forced change. Water stations, medical supervision, and heat protocols would follow, written in the cost of his life. Number 5. Knud Enemark Jensen, when Olympic heat became a silent killer. August 26, 1960, Rome was burning. The sun hammered the streets at over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the Olympic cycling course into an oven of stone and asphalt. The 100-kilometer team time trial demanded relentless speed. For nearly 3 hours, no shelter, no mercy. For Denmark, this was a medal chance. For Knud Enemark Jensen, it was the culmination of a life built around endurance. At just 23, Jensen had trained through brutal winters and endless miles, sculpting a lean engine meant to suffer. He knew pain. He respected it. But Rome was different. The heat crushed lungs, blurred vision, and drained strength faster than discipline could replace it. Still, the Danish team rolled out with confidence, locked into formation, chasing seconds that could define careers. As the race wore on, Jensen's body began to betray him. The pace stayed high. The temperature climbed higher. Teammates noticed the signs: unsteady riding, delayed reactions. But in a team time trial, slowing down meant surrender. Jensen pushed on, riding the edge where determination masks danger. Then it happened. Without warning, he swayed, lost control, and collapsed off his bike. His head struck the pavement with sickening force. The road that promised glory delivered trauma instead. Officials rushed in. Jensen lay unconscious, overwhelmed by heat exhaustion, compounded by a fractured skull. He was rushed to a Roman hospital as doctors fought to save him with the limits of 1960s medicine. They couldn't. Knud Enemark Jensen died hours later, the heat and the fall proving fatal. The cycling world reeled. The Olympics were forced to confront a hard truth: extreme conditions turn ambition into a weapon. His death reshaped endurance sports. Stricter medical oversight, heat protocols, and safer race management followed. Jensen never crossed a finish line that day, but his final ride drew one that still matters: the line where human limits must finally be respected. Number 6. Ignaz Stiefsohn, when the sky gave way. Ignaz Stiefsohn wasn't reckless. He was brilliant. A pioneer of aviation, one of the first men to prove that invisible thermal currents could lift a powerless glider high above Vienna. His mastery of the air earned him a place at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, where he was chosen to lead Austria's glider team in a demonstration meant to celebrate human control over nature. But days before the performance, Stiefsohn took his glider up for a routine training flight. Then, without warning, disaster struck. One wing fractured mid-air. The aircraft twisted violently, turning precision into freefall. He deployed his parachute, but at just 700 meters, there wasn't enough sky left. Stiefsohn hit the ground at lethal speed. Even experience couldn't save him. His death exposed a brutal truth of Olympic history. Sometimes danger isn't from competition, but from the unforgiving laws of physics themselves. Number 7. Bahman Golbarnezhad, a survivor who couldn't escape fate. Bahman Golbarnezhad had already cheated death once. As a young soldier during the Iran-Iraq War, he stepped on a landmine that tore away his left leg and nearly ended his life. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. For Bahman, it was only the beginning. He refused to be defined by what he had lost. Instead, he rebuilt himself through sport, rising from rehabilitation to become a national hero, winning multiple gold medals in Paralympic weightlifting before reinventing himself once again as a cyclist. By 2016, Bahman was Iran's sole representative in Paralympic road cycling at the Rio Games. Competing in the C4 category, he carried not just his own hopes, but the pride of an entire nation that saw him as proof that resilience could defeat any obstacle. The course, however, was unforgiving. Mountainous roads, steep descents, sharp turns, and brutal speed. During the road race, disaster struck. On a downhill section, Bahman lost control. His bike slammed into a rock with violent force. He was wearing a helmet. He followed every rule. None of it mattered. The impact caused severe head trauma, and his condition deteriorated rapidly. As he was rushed to the hospital, his heart stopped. Bahman Golbarnezhad died before reaching medical care. Instead of celebrating another medal, his son received the news that he was now an orphan, his mother having died years earlier from cancer. The Paralympic Games lowered their flags to half-mast in mourning. His death shattered the illusion that courage and compliance guarantee safety. Bahman survived war amputation and years of struggle only to be claimed by the thin, merciless line between sport and catastrophe. Number 8. Kazimierz Kay-Skrzypecki. Too old to quit, too late to stop. In January 1964, Innsbruck was preparing to make Olympic history. Lug was about to appear at the Winter Games for the very first time, a sport of raw speed, minimal protection, and terrifying consequences when things went wrong. 1 week before the opening ceremony, while most athletes were still settling into the Olympic village, Kazimierz Kay-Skrzypecki was already on the ice. At 55 years old, Kay-Skrzypecki was the oldest competitor at the Games. A former Royal Air Force pilot competing under the British flag, he was in remarkable physical condition and widely respected. Friendly, experienced, and fearless, he'd earned the nickname Uncle among younger athletes. Age hadn't slowed him, and he had no intention of letting it. But the Innsbruck luge track was deeply flawed. Sections were waterlogged, the ice unpredictable, and journalists openly noted how often athletes flipped instead of finishing clean runs. Complaints were made. Warnings were ignored. During a practice run, Kay-Skrzypecki's sled began to vibrate violently. Within seconds, it swerved out of control and launched off the track. He hit the ground at high speed, the impact crushing his body. In the hospital, doctors discovered severe skull and pelvic fractures. Against the odds, he survived the night. The next morning, surgeons attempted emergency surgery. His heart couldn't endure the trauma. Kazimierz Kay-Skrzypecki died before the Olympics had even begun. The village fell silent. Athletes demanded answers. Organizers gave none. Instead, rumors spread quietly, blaming his age, not the track. Flags were lowered, competition went on, and the danger remained. His death exposed an uncomfortable truth. Olympic history isn't only written by medals, but by those who paid the ultimate price before the world was even watching. Number 9. Ross Milne. Killed before the Games even began. January 1964. Innsbruck was dangerously unprepared. With little natural snow, Olympic organizers scraped together artificial courses, rushed into existence, carving downhill tracks through forests with minimal protection. There were no proper safety barriers, only trees, rocks, and patches of bare ground waiting inches from the racing line. Even journalists warned that the course looked more like a trap than an Olympic venue. Ross Milne was just 19 years old. Australia's best hope in alpine skiing, calm-focused, and proud to represent a country many Europeans believed didn't belong in winter sports at all. The pressure was enormous. This wasn't just about him, it was about proving Australia deserved to be there. On January 25th, during the first official practice run, Milne launched from the start. He flew down the course at 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, accelerating toward one of its steepest blind sections. As he entered the drop, he suddenly saw people standing on the track ahead. Instinct took over. He swerved to avoid them. There was no recovery. Milne lost control, veered offline, and slammed headfirst into a tree. The impact knocked him unconscious instantly. He was airlifted to the hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. Ross Milne died shortly after. It was the second death at the Innsbruck Olympics before the opening ceremony, before the flame was lit. Officials ruled it an accident caused by inexperience. No blame assigned, no course redesign. For Australia, it was devastating. For the Olympics, it was another warning ignored when safety is sacrificed for spectacle youth and talent offer no protection at all. No protection at all. No protection.